Hello, welcome to part 3 of Verbs 101. Today we're going to talk about perfect verbs. Now, when we say perfect, we don't mean that these verbs are better than the other types of verbs. When we say perfect, really what we mean is that the action is completed. So as of the present moment or the moment that you're speaking, whether in the past, present, or future, the action has already happened. So how we put it together is you take the subject, a helping verb, which is the verb to have, and then the verb in the past participle form. And the past participle is usually just adding an ed. So, for example, I have learned means as of this present moment that I'm speaking to you, I have learned that the moment that the learning has happened in the past, but I'm speaking to you in the present. So it's a little bit confusing because it kind of wraps up the present moment with the past, or when we're talking about the past moment with an even more distant past. So let's talk about, first of all, how to form that past participle verb at the end there. So we have regular and irregular. The regular past participles are just basically simple verbs. Now remember, you should be pausing this video and taking notes if any of this is new information. So just a quick review. Walk, for example, is just a regular verb in the past tense, and it's also a regular past participle. All you have to do is add an ed, and walk turns to walked. So, for example, he has walked. Love ends with an e, so whenever a word ends with an e, you just need to add the d, so that has an ed ending, such as loved. You have loved. When a verb ends with y, you take away the y and you add an ied, so try turns into tried with an ied. They have tried. And then, just like in the progressive tense, when we doubled the consonant, the same rule applies, where if there's one syllable with a, oh, there's a typo there. When there's one syllable with a vowel and a consonant at the end, is what it should say, then you double the consonant. So stop turns to stopped with two P's, and that keeps that soft O sound. Hopped, for example, has two P's, but if you only had one P, you would pronounce it hoped. So, for example, everyone has stopped. And the same is true with all one-syllable words with a vowel and then a consonant, such as beg or stir. All right, now let's talk about the irregulars. And I'm sorry to tell you, there's a long list. So in this list, we have the infinitive on the left-hand side, and then the past simple in the middle, and then the past participle on the right-hand side. And then that same order is repeated. So take a look at that list, pause if you need to, and read through each of these and kind of familiarize yourself, taking note of anything that you weren't aware of. So, for example, the verb to be in the present tense would be I was, or not present, but rather the past simple would be I was, like I was there. But with the past participle, it would be I have been there. So it turns to been. Another example, see in the past simple is saw, but in past participle is seen. She has seen it. Come in the past simple is came, but in the past participle it's come again. So you had come home instead of you had came home. Go in the past simple is went. We went there. But then in the past participle it's gone. Zoe had gone away. Known or know in the past simple is knew. He had knew it, but he knew it all along versus he had known it all along, or I had known it all along. And then finally, another one that sticks out is write, which in the past simple is wrote, but in the past participle is written. He had written it down. All right, now let's talk about the three tenses. Remember, there's the present, the past, and the future, and the same is true of perfect verbs. And let's start halfway up the mountain where we currently are in the perfect tense. So the perfect present tense means that you are saying that you have completed something as of this moment. For example, I have written a novel. The writing of the novel was in the past, but I'm speaking to you from the present. As of this moment that I'm speaking, I have written a novel. The dogs have run away. Another example, the exterminator has finally eradicated those pesky ants from my kitchen. Notice that he, she, or it, when it's a third person singular, it turns from have to has. Just remember that in the present simple form of the verb to have, it has an irregular form in the third person singular. So he, she, or it has. And now let's take a moment and look at this cabinet. Inside we have contractions. So I have, when you smush those two words together, you've got I've. For example, I have quit smoking. A less formal way to say that would be to say I've quit smoking. There's also you have, we have, they have, and then she has, he has, and it has. And all of those can be simplified into you've, we've, they've, or she's, he's, and it's. So this is often how we use language when we speak. We more often will say she's out of town than, or she has left town. We'd say she's left town instead of she has left town. And here's a problem though, when we talk about she's, he's, or it's, when do we know that that apostrophe S stands for has, and when does it stand for is, like in the present simple? Well, based on context. So, especially if you have a past participle following the verb, that's a pretty good clue that it's the perfect tense. Let's take a look at some examples. She's the best swimmer in the world. It doesn't make sense to say she has the best swimmer in the world, so chances are that's she is. She is the best swimmer in the world. How about it's been pretty quiet since then? Well, we already talked about be in the past participles been, so chances are that it has been pretty quiet since then. Sure enough, that's the present perfect. How about this one? She's tried to replicate her grandma's recipe for years. You're right, she has tried. And then he's my best friend, that's just going to be present simple. He is my best friend. Awesome. One more note about negatives. To make it negative in the perfect tense, we take that word not, the negative word, and we just put it right in between our two verbs, the helping verb and the past participle. So subject, have not verbed. I have not cleaned my house in weeks. And very likely, you already know this, you can take have and not and smush them together to get haven't. So you have subject, haven't verbed. I haven't cleaned my house in weeks. Or, but Tracy, you haven't eaten all day. Here we have the subject, have not, and then the past participle. And notice eaten is an irregular past participle that's on our list. All right, now let's jump into the perfect past. So in the perfect past, you are saying that you've completed something before a moment that's in the past. So you're speaking about a past moment and then a further past where something had happened as of that past moment. So the subject had, past participle, that word have is in the past tense now. I had already left the store when you called. So you calling was a moment that happened in the past. You called, but before that happened, I had already left the store. And for negatives, we can once again just throw that word not in between our helping verb have and the past participle. So you had not been home since Christmas that year. Contractions, we can also combine these words. I had turns to I'd. I had been gone a long time will be I'd been gone a long time. We also have you to you'd, we to we'd, they to they'd, she to she'd, and he to he'd. You've never told me that before. But how do we know when it's had or would? Because you could say you'd. So once again, it's context. So they'd already voted in the early election. Well, we have a past tense, we have a past participle in there, voted. So that's going to be our perfect tense. They had already voted in the early election. What about we'd always remember? Well, it doesn't make sense to say we had always remember because we don't have the past participle. It makes more sense to say we would always remember. How about he'd given them every opportunity? That's going to be he had given them every opportunity because given is the past participle version of the word give. And this one has a little bit of both. It says she'd never have gone if she'd known. She would never have gone if she had known. You can see why it can get a little bit confusing. I just want you to be aware of this. Sometimes that apostrophe D is had and sometimes it's would. All right. And contractions in the negative, had not can be turned to hadn't. They had not been out of Tennessee until last fall. It's going to turn into they hadn't been out of Tennessee until the last fall. And let's jump into the perfect future. I love that. So in the future perfect, you are saying that you will have done something by a certain time in the future. So the subject, the helping verb will, and then the helping verb have, and the past participle. For example, I will have earned my high school equivalency diploma before I'm 65. So 65 for me is a moment in the future, and I'm saying I will have done that by the time I have reached that goal in the future. It's a little bit of a mind map. For the negatives, you take that not and you're actually going to plop it right in the middle of will and have. So instead of between have and the past participle, it's going to be before the have. So you will not have failed if you don't get your high school equivalency diploma before you're 65. Now let's jump into the contractions. So in the future perfect, I will can change to I'll. As of August, all have lived in Tennessee for 3 years. That one's true. And then you will, we will, she will, he will, they will, and it will. And just change will to apostrophe double L. And here, thanks to oysterenglish.com, is a nice little graphic if you want to pause and copy that down. And that is it for our perfect verbs and the end of our series. So now it's time for you to do some practice, and practice makes perfect, and I hope that you have some nice detailed notes to go back to. If not, rewind the videos and write down that new information.